I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of a single story. The single story of books. I was an early writer, and when I began to write, at about the age of 7, I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue eyed. They played in the snow. They ate apples. What this demonstrates, I think, is how impressionable and vulnerable we are in the face of a story, particularly as children. Because all I had read were books in which characters were foreign, I had become convinced that books, by their very nature, had to have foreigners in them and had to be about things with which I could not personally identify. Now, things changed when I discovered African books. I went through a mental shift in my perception of literature. I realized that people like me, girls with skin the color of chocolate, whose kinky hair could not form ponytails, could also exist in literature. I started to write about things I recognized. So, what the discovery of African writers did for me was this: it saved me from having a single story of what books are. 2. Fide, the single story about him, his poverty. The year I turned 8, we got a new houseboy. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. When I didn't finish my dinner, my mother would say, "Finish your food, don't you know people like Fide's family have nothing?" So I felt enormous pity for Fide's family. Then, one Saturday, we went to his village to visit, and his mother showed us a beautifully patterned basket made of dyed raffia that his brother had made. I was startled. It had not occurred to me that anybody in his family could actually make something. All I had heard about them was how poor they were, so that it had become impossible for me to see them as anything else but poor. Their poverty was my single story of them. 3. My American roommate's single story about Africa. Years later, I left Nigeria to go to university in the United States. I was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. What struck me was this: she had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position toward me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In the single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human equals. So, that is how to create a single story. Show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become. The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. Of course, Africa is a continent full of catastrophes. There are immense ones, such as the horrific rapes in Congo, and depressing ones, such as the fact that 5,000 people apply for one job vacancy in Nigeria. But there are other stories that are not about catastrophe, and it is very important, it is just as important to talk about them. The consequence of the single story is this: it robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. Stories matter. Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity. I would like to end this with this thought that when we reject a single story, when we realize that there is never a single story about any place, we regain a kind of paradise.